The scripture this morning is taken from the book of Matthew. Hear the word of God. So when you give to the needy, do not sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be honored by men. Truly, I tell you, they already have their full reward. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. And your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. And when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners, to be seen by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you.
Before I jump into the sermon itself, I want to make a couple of comments. First of all, that hymn, I've never heard that hymn before. That was fabulous. Saying it, you know, my skies are blue, but yours are too, and all that kind of thing. What a great, great universal song. I'm going to take those words and type them out and put them on my desk. Gee, that was wonderful. And then thank you for this. This is also wonderful, this whole thing, because the theme today is great teachers. And of course, the man fell in love with this girl in the play, and they became great teachers to one another. Now, we have such a couple here in our church today who have just celebrated one of their anniversaries, and we're going to ask you, the Osbornes, please stand. You can come up here if you want to. If you don't want to, just stay where you are.
Oh, I'll do it.
Okay.
I want to let you know that last Thursday, I celebrated our 66th wedding.
Thank you. And my response is 35 of the happiest years of my life.
I can't beat you, but today, September 1st, is our 40th anniversary.
Okay. Any other announcements before? I'm going to make one. I had a carpal tunnel operation this last week, so I'm not shaking hands with my right hand. I know in some places it's an insult to shake hands with the left, but not for me. So I'll be happy about that either way. All right. As we all know, teachers come in a variety of forms. Some of them are humans, some are animals, some are objects, and so forth, on and on and on and on. Everything can be our teacher if we humble ourselves, sit at its feet, and say, teach me what I need to know today. In 1980, I attended a 2-week workshop led by Dr. Rev George, who was a medical doctor who became a spiritual teacher, and his partner at the time, Carolyn Conger, who is an intuitive, and she also is a PhD. Rev said that one time he had spent 14 days, 1 hour a day for 14 days, sitting with a triangle. The triangle that you play in the orchestra and hit on it and it makes a sound. And with that, he said, now I want you to go out into the desert. We were at a Sky High Ranch down outside Barstow. And he said, go out and find your external teacher. Well, you know, nobody's ever been given that kind of freedom. You know, just go out and find your teacher. There's one for step 1, you should do this. Step 2, do that. Step 3, do that. And step 4, do that. And then find your teacher. And he didn't. He dismissed all of that and just said, go out and find your teacher. So the hand's going. Could it be a stone? It can be anything. Can it be a rock? It can be anything. Can it be a person? Anything. And after that was repeated a number of times, he said, you got the message. Go out and get out of here. And So we all went out, there were about 30 of us, and when the bell rang, we had to come back in, I had not found anything. So when my turn came, I said that, and he said, oh, don't worry about it, you'll find it tomorrow morning. So when I got up the next morning, I of course went out to try to find my teacher. And I found a 2-foot yucca plant, a brand new one. And that's my teacher. And so for the next 13 days, I spent part of the morning and part of the late afternoon sitting with that and taking notes about what I was learning. It's a great exercise, and I recommend it to you. When Drew originally said that he had spent all those hours with a triangle, I said to myself, well, now I've signed up for the wrong place. This is a nut house, and that's a waste of time, and I can't go anywhere because we're way out in the desert, and I signed up for 2 weeks and paid a ton of money, and so I'm stuck. And I thought this was going to be the worst 13 days of my life, but it turned out to change my life. So the yucca plant, I'll just tell you one thing I learned from it. I think I learned 22 things from it. What I learned was in the morning it is facing east, and then during the day it follows the sun. And so the lesson for me was follow the light. Always follow the light. It seems rather simple, but it's really profound. I had an opportunity to meet with a man who was dying, and he was an atheist. And so they asked me to come because they knew I would not try to talk him out of being an atheist. But he did want to prepare for dying in a good way. So I said, all right, well, I don't want to talk about being an atheist, but let's pretend, just pretend, that after your body dies, you're still awake, and you're alive, and there's something there. And I said, what do you think it might be? He says, I've never thought about that because it's impossible, it's never going to happen, so, nothing. And I said, well, can I make a suggestion? And he says, sure. I said, well, if you find yourself in that position and you see a light, go to it. That's all. And I also said, the afterlife, if there is one, is not a place of punishment, it's a place of forgiveness and comfort and new teaching. Now, he's an atheist, right? So, he died 4 or 5 days later, and his daughter said, every day, he said to us, if I die and if there is something there, I'll follow the light. Wow, it's pretty good. And he also said, George said it was a place of healing and comfort, not a place of punishment. Now that's pretty good coming from an atheist. And I thought, oh, that's a wonderful thing. And I got that from the yucca plant. Did you think I was going to wrap that around? So the person that I'm going to talk about today is Nelson Mandela. He is you could be one of 1,000, but Nelson has a special place in my head and in my heart. Now, I was tempted to go and give a 10-minute review of his life. But I decided not to do that at all because I would obviously leave out things, and just giving a chronology of somebody like that can be rather boring. But if you want to do that, go to Wikipedia, type in Nelson Mandela, and you have a lot to read. You have a lot to read. Very, very accomplished man. There are a couple of things about him that I think are worth talking about. One is that he was put in prison simply because he was asking to vote. Here our apartheid was in place, and the white people who were running the country, they weren't going to let black people who owned the country from early on, were going to let them vote because they had the majority. Finally, as we all know, after spending 17 years in prison, and after this and that and this and that, finally they got the vote. Now, when they got the vote, they also needed a new national anthem. And the reason they needed one is that the old one was in praise of apartheid. Now, it wasn't said in so many words, but everybody knew. And we all know that we hear people talking sometimes kind of vague, that we know exactly what they're talking about. They're putting somebody down, they're putting themselves up. They're criticizing that person, blah, 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 and on it goes. So that is what that old national hymn was all about. And they needed a new one that had a today as an example. So Nelson said, I want it to be 1 minute and 48 seconds long. And I want it to be so simple that everybody can sing it. A number of years ago, I had an occasion to meet with an accomplished musician who was a very good singer, and he had sung one time the Star Spangled Banner at the Giants game. And I said, how was that? Oh, he said it was magnificent. He said, you know, you go in a special place, and you get to meet all the different people, and they treat you like a king. And if you're a great woman singer, I'm sure you'd be like a queen. And he said it was just magnificent. And I said, I understand that the Star Spangled Banner is a very difficult song to sing. And it's like I lighted a match or a torch under him. He said, difficult to sing, it's awful. He said, the only people who like it are those that don't have to sing it in public. And I said, well, could we come up with some new music and some new words? He says, yeah, but it's never going to happen. I'm going to suggest it today. In the bulletin is the national anthem for South Africa. And I'm going to point out several things. But before I do that, I want to say something about our national anthem and the need for new music and new words. I think the time has come for us to do that, and that it would represent our entire nation, not just one day in the life of our nation. That's what ours does today. And the story that is about our national anthem and those words are really touching. It is impressive, it is magnificent, and it was a great day, but it was during war. And I think there are other things that should be said and done. So I'm not starting a campaign, I'm just making a statement that I would like to see a new national anthem that reflects all that's going on today. And I would like to see it have 5 verses and it be done in 5 different languages. Because that does reflect the nation that we live in. Now, in the South African national anthem, in the lyrics, you can see there are 5 verses, and it's done in 5 different languages. The Afrikaners, that was taken from the apartheid people. And a lot of people said to Nelson, we don't want that in there. That is slavery, that is one group dominating another group and stealing property, on. Why would we have that? And look down there at the bottom of all this, the part that's underlined. He pointed out that it is included in large part due to the wishes of the first post-apartheid South African President Nelson Mandela, who intended its inclusion as a reconciliatory measure for the post-apartheid future of South Africa. That's pretty good. Now, a person in our country who did something similar was Abraham Lincoln. He did not turn around and punish the South. He turned around and included them. And so that's what is done here. Now, I want to mention one thing about, well, first of all, it's interesting that in 3 of the 5, God is mentioned. And if we get a new one, I doubt that the word God will be in there at all, but it's interesting that they have it. And look at the last verse. Sounds the call to come together, and united we shall stand. Wow. See, I think we could use that in our country right now. Right? Let us live and strive for freedom. Now, in the American version, it is let us strike, fight, and die for freedom. Got to throw in a death in there to make it worthy of our participation. Let us live and strive for freedom in South Africa, our land. And so I present these two things, Nelson Mandela, the person, and this song, a song, as great, 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 great teachers. And we're going to listen to this song being sung, and then we will have a dialogue, and the dialogue is for you to mention a great teacher for you and what you learned from that great teacher. And just one example, because you know, we need to give other people an opportunity to talk about theirs. Let us listen.
Così si keleli Afrika, malupagani supono wayo, Israel mitanda so yetu, così si kelela tina, lusapo wayo, murena muluka senjala sa Yesu, ufelice din toale matwenge, o sebuluke si chalasa, Yesu si chalasa, South Africa, South Africa. Hey, no fun on hemel, hey, liefde van ons Heer, oor ons ewige gebedes, waar die kranse aan vergeet. Something called to come together, and united we shall stand. Let us live and strive for freedom in South